Guy. Welcome to today's session, and thank you so much for making time for having this conversation with us.
Thank you, Shivani. Happy to be here.
Great. Everyone, hi. Welcome back to Caffeine and Carrots. I'm Shivani. I'm a CSM at SmartKarrot. And with me in today's session, where we are going to talk about building relationships as a CSM, I have with me Guy Galone here. So I would request Guy to now introduce himself and let us know the audience who we are having on the podcast today.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Guy Galon. I'm currently the VP of Customer Success at Umbrella. Umbrella is a European cybersecurity managed service provider, and I'm responsible for the customer success and the go-to-market team. I have more than 20 years experience in customer management roles, post-sales, it used to be called post-sales, program project management, account management. And I've worked in different companies, very big enterprises and small startups, built and managed customer success teams. And in the last few years, I also do mentoring, lectures, and try to write on LinkedIn about customer success and share with my audience as many practical tips and best practices as much as I can. And it's great to be here with you, Shivani.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy. Thank you for the introduction. And I think we've stumbled upon the right topic and hopefully at the right time, which is building relationships. And it is a key CSM skill, no denying about it. So that's what we're going to talk about in our today's podcast. So, Guy, let me ask with a very basic question, which is what are the fundamental aspects of relationship building that are crucial for CSM?
First of all, it's always a good time to talk about relationship building. I think it's a natural behavior of us as humans. Now, given AI, we always ask ourselves how much a relationship will still be influential, and I still think it will be influential. It's still, as long as people will do business with people. And the basics that I would like, or the fundamental aspects that I would like to talk about are, I would say some of them are, true for any relationship building, but for CSM, there are a few things which we need to be more mindful of. And first one is just be intentional. And when you approach two people, it's a professional relationship, so we need to understand that this is what we are going to do. And I think the intention here is just to make sure that the other person, your customer, the other stakeholder, he or she, they understand that you're here to help them, to make them successful, to make their team successful. And I think you want to make them realize that as well. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is listening, and we often say that, but it's more than just listening. It's what we call active listening, which means that you're able to ask the appropriate questions to reveal challenges and issues, not just textbook questions, but actually show to the other person that you can understand what they need to do, what their objectives are, and how you can actually help them.
Okay.
Another aspect is empathy, which is true. It's a human a trait, but I think it's a byproduct of proactive listening. So what your stakeholder feels, or the other person feels, or what they need from you, and not to ask them sometimes very direct questions. You need to be able to show in your body language, in the way you speak, in the way you attend the call, how quickly you can help them. And I think empathy is not something that necessarily you just say, but it's also a byproduct of what you do actually in your relationship with the other person.
Those are insightful. And of course, when you started, you said as long as it's between human beings that businesses are being dealt with. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I recently read the Gartner's prediction that in 2 years, at least major portion of the enterprises will already have machine-to-machine business units. So there is expectation that some of the business that maybe today involves humans will be done by a machine-to-machine communication, but we'll see about that.
Yeah. We'll see when it arrives, and hopefully in all good ways. Now, as a CSM, one of the things that we do day in and day out is having more new customers on our portfolio. So, as a customer success manager like myself and so many others out there, how do we approach building rapport with new clients?
I kind of split it. I think it's quite logical and sequential. So I would like me or my team to be ready and prepared. So if it's a new person or a new client, I would like to understand the background. We can get some information from sales. Proper handover from sales is usually important and necessary to make sure we know who we are going to talk with and what their expectations are. You can check on LinkedIn their people's profile. That's the other way to do it. You can use your network or people that know other people to get more information about them. So preparation, I think, is a key. And then when we meet them, if it could be the first meeting and also in any other meeting, to be able to demonstrate knowledge of their environment, of their challenges. We mentioned proactive listening. So whatever you captured in different meeting will be very good to follow up or mention in the following meeting, so they can see that you are there to actually not just listen, but to remember and act upon certain actions or certain promises that you make. I think other than the first meeting, which is always, for some of it is used to introduction, we want to create from one meeting to the next some kind of hooks or follow-ups and maintain a certain frequent communication depending on the requirements from the other person. So by doing so, you're making sure that one thing follows the next, because it's a relationship. It's ongoing. We are not there just to do one meeting and meet the customer at the renewal. Usually, that's going to fail, that approach. So we have, as a CSM, needs to find those angles and points where we can follow up. And then we can use the follow-up to provide more updates, reports, look at certain recommendation, best practices, and then this is also helping to build the confidence with your customers. And I would maybe add that sometimes we do all of that, but sometimes we forget to seek feedback and ask the other side about, has that been helpful? Is this going to help you to achieve your targets and your job? And make sure that you get some response and see that if you are on the right direction, or maybe you need to make some changes.
That's I think I do deal with, and I'm sure all the CSMs who are listening here do relate to it. But it's good to have reaffirmations on what we are doing. That are these the right skills with which we are approaching our new clients? So that's helpful, Guy. Now, the next question, it is, of course, like you mentioned, there will be challenges. No matter how we are communicating and how well it is going, at some point there might be. So how do we navigate challenges or conflicts within client relationships while maintaining a positive connection, of course?
Let's start with making sure that we try to understand the other person's point of view. When we start clashing, hopefully not, but even if you take it from a personal perspective, sometimes we don't stop and ask ourselves why the other person or the other side say something, which goes again to the first thing about empathy. So try to empathize with the customer, the person, try to understand where they're coming from and why you are not in agreement. And then usually, and I'm saying based on my experience, those challenges or conflicts are based on some gaps in expectations or communication in most cases. It could also be some personal issues, but that's a separate story. From a professional perspective, usually the cases where I ended up with customers in some kind of conflicts, it's usually some kind of expectation or communication gap. And then also we want to see how we resolve it. So definitely keep it a professional, which means that you need to first of all identify the root cause or the reason for the conflict. First of all, make sure you understand. So there has to be some discussion with a customer to understand what's the root cause for that problem, and then resolving it. So it could be very simple thing. I usually like to look at, this is where in my project management hat, we usually fix things by timeline, quality, or scope, or less. So either I need to do something earlier, or I need to do something more, or there is a quality issue, there is a bug defect, or a bug, and I need to fix it. Or it could be also more complicated, like maybe we had an SLA breach, maybe a customer is requesting something that the sales promised and it's nowhere near what we can do, or it has a huge cost and budget impact, or we need to change prioritization. And all of those things, sometimes require internal escalation, involve your manager, involve the sales, And the earlier you do that, the better or the most chances you have to fix it without, creating damage in the relationship. And having said all of that, I would recommend to keep the communication open with the customer, with the other side, and not to stick to emails, which is always something that people don't necessarily fully understand. Also keeps people thinking, oh, maybe something is being hidden. Maybe this email is going to be later used against me. So try to keep things open, reduce vagueness, tell the customer when you should expect to get back to them, and also not be afraid to actually say things that may not be exactly what the customer is expecting, but at least this is the truth, and this is reality. And as I said, if you need to involve higher manager or more senior managers, you may need to do that because not everything can be resolved by a CSM.
I agree. I agree. And because I've faced that time and again as a CSM, of course, at some point you have to handle conflict, and you should be better prepared than I used to be when I started out as a CSM. So that's helpful. What stands out, Guy, in all these questions that I've asked and you responded is having empathy, an intelligent kind of empathy, and not just being like a general kind. So that stands out for me. That brings me to my next question, which is personalizing the relationships that CSMs have. So, how do we personalize our approach to relationship building based on unique needs of every client?
Again, that could also be a question generally for how we manage relationship generally, but for professional standpoint, I over the years developed kind of my own framework to simplify the unique characteristics of stakeholders that I worked with. And obviously the human nature is very complicated, but I try to distill it to two different dimensions. The differences between being a reactive person to being proactive, and someone who is a more structured thinker or structured person to a freestyle, someone who likes to do everything his or in his own way and maybe not following specific framework. So if you take those two dimensions and you cross them, you get 4 different type of persons. And this is how I try initially to personalize my approach and to talk to those people. If you don't mind, I can share my screen and show you a quick illustration, so the audience will find it easier to understand.
Okay.
So, as I said, one dimension is freestyle structure, the other dimension is reactive proactive, and that gives you different ideas and tips how to handle the communication generally, because each person is different. There could be other dimensions as well, but if just I take, for example, I know someone who is very structured and reactive, the bottom left. So I made few points. You can ask questions about the stakeholders' roles and objectives to make sure that they actually articulate it in a way that you can understand. Usually they will, because they are structured. They can tell you exactly what they do. You can ask them about written documentation, resources that can help you to gain the stakeholder trust, what kind of references you can point to when you deal with that person, contract, SOW, plans, whatever. Ensure that you have a proper communication. Usually they like emails or reports. Agree on pre-scheduled touch points. Again, if this person is more structured and reactive, he will expect you to lead the way and do it in meetings and do it in emails and reports. You can, based on some knowledge of that person, suggest some value-added activities and ask for their opinion and see if you can lead the way. And see if you can drive decision and next steps. Some customers actually expect you to do that. You are the domain expert. You know what to do. You just tell us what we need to do, and we'll take it from there. So just one example that we have, and I will share it, of course, with you, and you will be able to share it with the audience.
Definitely. That's very insightful. The fact that you have made all these categorizations, I'm sure if we walk through that slide in detail, one and we get a lot more from it. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll share it with our audience when we publish this. And the next and the last question is, can you share some strategies or techniques based on your experience? You have been in this industry for so long, for maintaining strong relationships with clients over time.
So first of all, you could always use the framework and the playbook that I shared with you a minute ago. It's also always a good start. Other strategies and ideas is avoid single point of failure as much as possible. So you invest in relationship, but life is dynamic. People change roles, companies change direction. It's very much advisable not to rely on one person. Sometimes we don't have a choice, but as a best practice, I would advise to have more than one person that you work with and acknowledge the value and acknowledge the engagement that you have as a vendor with that customer. With a bigger accounts, enterprise accounts, I think you should follow stakeholder management practices. You can use Salesforce or other tools, customer success tools, to record the different stakeholders, their title, seniority, what their approach is, what the sentiment is, and possibly even have objectives that you plan for this relationship. For example, this person needs to support your next upsell or be influential in your renewal. I think you should also define to yourself objectives that you wish to achieve with them, not just on a short-term basis, but maybe on a longer-term basis, especially if it's a 1 year or multi-year contract. So again, more things that I think are resonate very well with CSMs. Can we expect this person to attend a QBR? Will this person be able, as objective, can this person support expansion or growth plans? Can this person provide us introduction to other stakeholders and broaden the relationship? Will this person acknowledge the roadmap of us as a vendor and be able to share the needs that they have as a business so we can see if there is a match? And the other thing that we are trying to do with customers, create references and advocacy, and whatever this person could also serve as a reference in the future. And as such, I think you can define different plans for different stakeholders. And on top of that, there are the senior stakeholders, and which is an art for itself. How do you prepare, how you approach, how you can get the first meeting, and how you kind of leverage senior stakeholders relationship to achieve your goals as well. But that's, I guess, it could be a topic for another discussion.
Yeah. Guy, this has been a very insightful discussion, to say the least. With your experience, I personally have derived a lot in such a short span of time, and I hope the listeners feel the same way.
I hope so as well.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you for having me, Shivani.
Yeah. And see you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All the best.